October 4th, 2023. Well, yesterday, I guess we have to say that the Republican Party shot itself in the foot, at least in the House side. This vote to vacate the speakership and ousting Kevin McCarthy as Speaker, who, in my opinion, is the best Speaker that the Republicans have had since Newt Gingrich. I mean, when we think about who the other people were and what they did, yes, much better. And I think that, so I have nothing but disdain for the 8 people in the Republican Party that voted that way. And I'm not sure exactly stunned, but I'm just amazed at the glee that the people on Twitter who seem to be representing the Republican conservative side of things, Trump supporters and the like, they think this is great, even though actually Trump actually supported Kevin McCarthy, I think, from what I can tell. And so, I think that these are basically negative people who really don't know how to get anything done, but successfully. But anyhow, so I've got to go a little bit over the subject and, kind of what I think about why it happened. I think this does pose some ongoing problems for the Republican Party because the problem that caused this is not gone. I don't believe it's Kevin McCarthy, who I think was quite effective. I mean, I think in part, some of it may lead to some kind of personal vendettas that may have to do with various interactions they've had over the years with him, perhaps when he was the minority leader or, and so forth, or whatever. But I noticed that Newt Gingrich on an interview tonight on Hannity actually referred to them as traitors. And in a sense, I do. I mean, they allied with the Democrats who in a block vote actually voted along with these 8 people. And I think some people probably abstained. I have to look at the final list, but we know the 8 people that voted in the final vote. And so I can kind of go through that and kind of run down, a little bit of what's with them and why they might have done it. But by the way, if you like these videos, please give me a like. Looking always for more subscriptions. And, of course, you can click the bell for notifications. So, but anyhow, the people that really, were primarily involved in this, the ringleader, of course, is Matt Gaetz, who's been notoriously pushing for all these kind of destabilizing things, including the one person can make the motion kind of thing. And then, when you look at the people in there, they're not the idea that these are really the true conservatives and like more conservative than Kevin McCarthy. I don't think so. I think I would call them the non-pragmatic people, the people that aren't prepared to do what's necessary to get things done. They like to take the stance that they want something a certain way, but they don't have the idea of how they might possibly carry that out. And Gaetz himself, I think, is a personal vendetta. It may partly have to do with his ethics complaint, which is what McCarthy says. He denies it, but what's he supposed to say? This all's a vendetta having to do with my ethics complaint, if you see what I'm saying. I remember earlier in yesteryears, he was actually supporting Paul Ryan, who was obviously a lot less effective in some ways. Okay, on there you do have Ken Buck, who is from Colorado. I think is a very establishment type person in a lot of ways, and he's upset with people going after the Justice Department. I mean, he's a former prosecutor, and he's probably a state that probably has a bit of a swing state flavor to it, and is afraid that the conservatives will lead to his political demise. And then, of course, we have Nancy Mace, who's hardly a very strong conservative. She's more of a feminist, I think. She's pro-choice, and and again, what Burr got under her saddle, I don't know. I don't think she was one of the original people that was fighting McCarthy in the beginning, as I recall. The other 5, I think, fall into the kind of the well, they're conservative people who have a variety of issues, but I think they're mainly people who are having trouble with their own insignificance, basically. In other words, they just kind of, you know, think they ought to be somebody more than they really are. You got Andy Biggs, who's good on a lot of issues, but I mean, what he did is counterproductive to what he wants to accomplish. Matt Rosendale, an individual, was hoping for a small majority so he could do stunts like this. Crane, I don't know much about him. Bert, you know, yeah, Bob Good, Virginia. Yeah, he's another one of those people. A lot of them are budget hawks, but they're unprepared to face what's really going to go on. And Tim Burchett, I don't know what the deal with him is. Maybe that was a more of a personal animus thing. Apparently, maybe McCarthy said something that offended him when he was trying to convince him to change his vote. I don't know quite. He probably, maybe he's ticked off because he didn't get the support for his UFO or UAP special project thing. Which, I mean, I agree with Burchett on that, but I don't think this is going to help him get what he wants somehow. Maybe I'm wrong. But at any rate, that kind of is a rundown of like who the people were that caused this fracas. And three other people actually kind of voted with them that didn't vote for the discharge petition, but didn't go along with the final vote. Probably didn't matter. You didn't need more than 8 anyhow, since you had every Democrat there that was voting practically. And so that's kind of, you know, basically a rundown of the victims and probably what their motivations are. But of course, this doesn't help anything. For one thing, the new speaker, whoever that's going to be, and of course, Kevin McCarthy has declined to continue to run for speaker. I don't know if this means forever or just in this term, because I mean, but obviously, if he did run, you just have endless votes with the same 8 people probably voting no every time, and you need to have under the current situation, you'll need to have, normally it's 218, but since there's 2 vacancies right now, it will be 217 votes to actually pick a new speaker. It's not just even the majority of the people present, it's the majority of the whole House. And if people aren't present, that still is a problem. And of course, you know, I think Luna's out with having a baby. So anyway, so you see the kind of thing you're dealing with. So that's kind of where we are on that one. Yeah, but I think this will create even a weaker speaker because essentially, when the new person, whoever it is finally picked, and we don't know how long that will take, I think the people are so mad at each other they decided to adjourn for a week just to chill out. I can imagine that meeting probably was not too friendly. Maybe that's why you adjourn this thing. So let's adjourn this before we make everybody real enemies of each other, right? You know, and so, because like the big thing that caused it was the decision to go ahead and go with the continuing resolution. However, you have to realize that only happened after 2 separate votes with better bills than that many of these people in this group also rejected. I almost tend to think they just wanted to do this actually. And so I don't know if they calm down and become team players and, you know, pick, say, Steve Scalise or somebody like that as a new speaker, then maybe we can get on with things and just kind of, you know, kind of act like it didn't happen and just keep on going. On the other hand, if these people are going to continue to basically demand that the speaker, Republican speaker, did not negotiate with the Democrats and they continue to demand extreme measures, then we're into a real problem here, folks. Probably will defeat the Republican Party in the next election. And the reason is this. You have to realize that the Senate has to ultimately pass whatever they do. And if we had the ideal conservative bill with the spending cuts, the border security, no aid for Ukraine that those people want, and everything else. And remember, a majority of the Republicans in the House are for aid for Ukraine. All right, not these eight people maybe, but and there may be a bunch that aren't too keen on it. But I don't think it's more than half. And all the Democrats are for it. So you know you're not going to get this thing passed into law this way. I don't think. And ultimately, we'll see. And definitely this will become In fact, one of the things I'm actually concerned about is two things. One is that the Democrats could end up getting the speakership out of this ultimately if we don't get our act together real quick. And that is because it would only take a few moderate Republicans to decide to vote with the Democrats to put them in power or to try to negotiate some kind of a coalition government. After all, um, you know, everybody talks about the uniparty. It could actually emerge, although it won't. I don't think it will emerge from the Democrats. They're so unified that the idea that moderate Democrats and moderate Republicans would somehow get together, I don't think there's enough of them to do it. So you might have a situation where a few people just voted for them and then basically voted against them, but didn't become team players for them, but just put them in charge so things could happen and then start voting the other way, which would still be a logjam. In other words, every time he tried to organize it a different way, they'd vote it down, but they'd make him speaker, hypothetically, or something, in order to get the Democrat votes to get him in. I don't know if that's possible or not. I think it's improbable, but it's one thing. Another thing, if the thing really goes into a truly protracted shutdown, I could actually imagine that Biden would take potentially unconstitutional action. In other words, just spend the money without congressional authorization because he says it's a national emergency. The Congress has malfunctioned and I got to do what I got to do. Now, we'd impeach him, of course, I guess, except, well, assuming we actually had a speaker by that time. But the Senate would probably just blow it off. And if the bureaucracy carries it out, what's to stop them? I mean, I think that people have to remember that we're dealing with people who are prepared to get rid of the filibuster, pack the Supreme Court, and rig the elections and mail out ballots willy-nilly to everybody that they registered to vote. When they got their driver's license. I mean, you understand what the kind of mayhem these people are fully willing to do. And if you give them an excuse to do it, I think they might do it. Now I'm getting a little extreme here, but I'm saying these are the worst case scenarios. A more probable scenario is that the Republicans eventually pick some speaker who will be much weaker than McCarthy, who won't be able to get much done. That the agenda that we were trying to work on will just sort of fade away, and we'll end up with a continuing resolution anyhow, because, and then maybe we'll oust that guy too after he does it. We may start having musical speakers, perhaps. Every time somebody necessarily betrays this group of 8 or something, then they get voted out, and then they pick another one. I mean, that could happen too. I mean, this is probably not probable, but I'm just saying I think you're going to see a greater degree of weakness on getting anything done, or what we might have done if we'd have stuck with what McCarthy was trying to do. So anyway, because my own opinion is I actually thought that McCarthy was a better pick than Ryan was years ago. And then they went with Ryan, and I think he was a disaster, basically, pretty much. I mean, at least he got in such a conflict with Trump, it wasn't, calling Trump a racist and stuff like that, I mean, Trump may be a lot of things, but I don't think he's a racist. After all, he did get the NAACP Image Award. You don't usually get that if you're a racist, right? So that's just what the Democrats call anybody who don't agree with their agenda. At any rate, well, that's kind of what I think about that. I think it's a sad day for the Republican Party, and we'll have to see in the next few weeks if we can patch this mess together and avoid a complete meltdown. But I don't like what they did. I think it's just bad news. Well, at any rate, so anyway, that's kind of it for now. As always, of course, I'll post on Rumble as my backup channel. I hope people will subscribe to Rumble if they're on it, on my account over there, and of course my social media account addresses are in the description below. And I'll wrap this up for now. Until next time.